I toured over 30 apartments trying to find the perfect one to live in New York City. So I feel like I finally cracked the code on where to look, how much money to put aside, and everything else that you can think of. A lot of the times on social media and on YouTube, we see these very unattainable lives where people are living in high-rise luxury buildings, and we expect that for ourselves too, when really it's not exactly realistic for the average person. So this video is made for the average person trying to move to New York City. If you guys don't know me, my name is Mahua. I'm a native New Yorker and I am 26 years old. I recently just moved to this apartment right now, so that's why I am still like setting up and decorating my new place right here. I live in Queens. I moved recently from another apartment in Queens, from a studio apartment to my first ever one bedroom. So I'm really excited about this like extra space for the first time ever.
As I'm editing this, I realized that I forgot to mention that I have a whole playlist on my YouTube called the Moving to New York City Diaries, where you can learn just so much about, how much it is to like afford life here, how you can budget and save money, where you can apartment hunt and find like more budgeted type of apartments like the one that you're watching here, how to make friends, and so many other different parts of just like living in New York City besides just like finding an apartment and then that's it. So make sure to check that out if there's like any information that you couldn't find in this video, because it's probably in another video. But as always, just like let me know in the comments if you do want me to make like a part 3 or like another follow-up video on something very different or very specific. But as always, just know that I'm always here and I got you guys, okay? I am here to deliver information and I go hard.
I have my glasses on, so you know this is serious. But if you guys didn't watch the first video that I made about this a few weeks ago, please make sure to watch that, because I give you more realistic tips on what it's like moving here and peak season, what documents you need, and then on top of that I showed 10 apartments that I toured with prices and things like that, so you can get a better idea. This is part 2 of that video because I know some of you guys requested how much money I paid to just move to New York City and just more of the apartments that I toured, because let me tell you, this is like the Olympics in New York City, okay? People go hard trying to find apartments. It is sometimes very overwhelming and very scary. So this video is made for the average person trying to move to New York City, because a lot of the times on social media and on YouTube, we see these very unattainable lives where people are living in high-rise luxury buildings, and we expect that for ourselves too, when really it's not exactly realistic for the average person. So this video is made for you if you are trying to live in a more affordable or a more budgeted life. So I'm gonna give you tips on where to look and how to find the perfect area related to your own values and lifestyles and budget and things like that. I'm gonna tell you my own experience on how much I put aside money-wise and how much you might spend on an estimate trying to move to New York City, so you can again get a better idea of what it's like just moving here. And third, I'm obviously gonna give you a guide on all of the apartments that I toured, because again, I toured over 30 apartments in the span of a month, and it was a crazy journey. So I'm gonna show you 5 in this video, and then as always, I'm gonna give you some tips and tricks on top of that on just like living here and moving to New York City. And guys, let me tell you, I put so much effort and work and research into videos like this, on top of obviously my personal knowledge on touring these apartments and just trying to live here as a native. Please make sure to like and subscribe if these videos are helpful, especially if you are trying to move here, because again, I put in so much effort to try to make it as informative and as valuable for you guys, so you can live like a more fruitful life here instead of just constantly struggling. If you'd also like, follow me on my Instagram and TikTok, where I post every single day and you'll see more short form content about things like this. It's at Mahua Khan. But let's get on with this video. Let me put this coffee cup down because you guys hated it in the last video. So the first topic of conversation: how do you find the perfect area to live in? How do you know that this is the place for you, especially if you've never lived in New York and you're coming from another state or country? The first resource to use is Reddit, okay? Reddit has a lot of personal experiences on specific areas, even specific streets, and me, even as a native New Yorker, I made sure to use this before signing any lease, before really touring any area, just so I can see like a personal experience of what the people living in that area are going through. For example, if you are trying to live specifically on like 53rd and Lexington, you can search up on Reddit, what is it like living on 53rd and Lexington Avenue in Manhattan, right? And people will tell you there's this much crime, or these food spots are really great. So if you are not living here right now and you're trying to get a feel of what the area is like, I highly recommend going on that website. Another tip that I have that I actually recommended in my last apartment hunt video is search up that area on Google Maps or Apple Maps and see it via satellite view, because this will help you understand what it's like walking through there or driving through there and really seeing it from that POV. And this way you'll see if there are subways nearby or good restaurants nearby and just what the view is, because sometimes, as you'll notice in apartment listings, the unit is a catfish, okay? It looks very beautiful and bright and just really nice in the photos, but then once you actually get to the building or the unit, it looks nothing like the pictures and it was completely edited. So you can't completely trust these units or what they are writing in the description because it's not 100% accurate. So you can kind of gauge out what the area is like through satellite view and seeing if it's like a hustle bustle type of culture in that specific neighborhood. Is it more quiet? What kind of local stores are nearby? And this kind of gives you a feel again of like the authentic culture of that area. Another recommendation that my friend Tisha actually mentioned in her YouTube video, so make sure to watch that as well, that I completely forgot about. There's a website called openigloo.com where you can search up different apartments and units and neighborhoods even, and you can see open violations that that building has had, if anyone has gotten evicted. There are also reviews by the tenants or other people living in that area or in that building, and you can also even apply for apartments on that website. So this is a great resource if you want to get like more of a reliable source from the direct point of view, you know, because I wish that before I moved into my previous apartment, I was able to talk to the people actually living in that home and see their experience with the super, or see their experience with the plumbing. The next tip that I have, which is very important, it is figure out what your non-negotiables are, what your trade-offs are, and how you want your quality of life to be, okay? So what I mean by this is that your non-negotiables in an apartment or in a unit, so for example, a non-negotiable for an apartment or an area is that you really want a subway nearby so you can commute to work easily, or you want a laundry in the building. So those things usually price an apartment a little bit higher, right? And then for a trade-off, you have to think about what you have to sacrifice sometimes to get something else that you want. Like, are you willing to sacrifice an extra $500 so that you can get a better view of Manhattan in the place that you're living in? A lot of people, when they move to New York City without having too much information on New York City, they think that the only place to live in is Manhattan, right? Because we see all these amazing videos of just living in Manhattan. And so people pay an extra $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever it is to have this shoebox apartment in Manhattan most of the time. If they are working in Manhattan, they're closer to work and it's a lot easier to commute. But then you have to think about, is it better for me to live a little bit outside of Manhattan and still have access into the city, but maybe add 20-30 minutes onto the commute, but then have a bigger space to live in where I have a better quality of life? So really just think about how you want your life to be based on your budget, based on where you work, based on if you have a family or not. So there are a lot of things to look into before you just choose automatically that you want to live in Manhattan, because that's like the most in your face obvious thing that we've all grown up with, you know? So like for reference, a lot of people live in Park Slope, which is a neighborhood in Brooklyn, if they have a family, because their kids have more options for schools to go to or parks and things like that. And then if you want a place that has a lot of culture and good food, people might choose Harlem in Manhattan or Jackson Heights in Queens. If you want more of like a hip scene with like a lot of nightlife where it has a view of Manhattan, but you don't want to pay like Manhattan prices, many people choose Williamsburg in Brooklyn or Long Island City in Queens. So there are so many different options for like what kind of person you are, what your budget is. Just open your perspective to different places. And I guess my final closing thought on this topic is that there are a lot of stereotypes on the internet and in people's perception that some areas are more dangerous than others. I feel like, for example, the Bronx or Brooklyn is such a turnoff for people. Like when I was in London and I was in an Uber and I was talking to the driver about where I lived, he just assumed that Brooklyn was this like very bad, unsafe area, which obviously in any city, in any country, in any place, there are areas that aren't necessarily the safest, right? But it's not fair to categorize like an entire like area into being unsafe and just like unlivable, because that's not how it is, and it's not fair to the people that actually live there. So just open your eyes to like different options, because there are great areas and bad areas in every place. Just do your extra research to like actually look into it, and you might even fall in love with it, you know, who knows? Like give yourself that option. Okay, now this is the fun part about how much I paid, how much in total everything was for the most part of just moving apartments and finding a place and this and that in the last month. Let me tell you, it was very stressful, and if you guys have been watching my vlogs, you know that it was not the most fun thing, okay? Okay. So I applied to quite a few apartments just because I was trying to be open with options. I applied to 5 apartments and there are usually application fees with every apartment. It's usually like $20. I paid a total of $100 in just application fees. On top of that, I got movers as well. The movers were amazing. Thankfully, I got it comped, but based on the estimate, the moving company would have charged $700, which is kind of like on the lower to mid end, just because I lived in a studio apartment before and I didn't have as much furniture and like heavy lifting for them to do. If you do live in a bigger space and you're moving more stuff across the country or whatever it is, you're probably going to get charged more depending on what company it is. But what I did pay for is the tip, which was $120. But if you can put some money aside for someone to actually move everything for you, please consider it. I never thought about it before just because I'm the type of person to just move everything by myself, build everything myself, but it really helps you so much with the whole process, making it less stressful. And also if you have back problems like me, it helps a lot, okay? Okay, so the meat of this, when I actually did find an apartment, I had to put down a broker's fee. Sometimes they charge just 1 month of rent, sometimes they charge a yearly fee, like a percentage. For me, they charge a 10% fee, which was like a total of the rent for the entire year, right? So the total was $3,480. And it's interesting because even if you don't hire a broker to help you throughout the whole process of finding apartments and showing you around and things like that, you usually still have to pay a broker's fee, which is kind of like a messed up thing. Like even if you do all the work, you still have to pay that. You can usually negotiate that. So it was originally 12% of the yearly rent price, brought it down to 10%. And then the next bulk of the money was first and last months of rent, which was a total of $5,800. So the grand total was $9,500 just to move to this apartment in New York City. And I'm not even including all of the furniture that I bought on top of that, all the cleaning supplies, all of like the bills and things that I had to switch over. I'm not including any of that, which, you know, was a whole other bulk of it. But on the other end of the stick, a lot of people are like, oh, with all of that money, you can just buy a place in New York City and own it and then, you know, pay the mortgage or whatever it is on top of that. But it's not that easy in New York City. A mortgage in New York City could be like $4,000, $5,000, whatever the amount is, which is a high amount. But then before you even do that, you have to pay a huge down payment. Like even apartments in New York City, 1 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms in Queens or Brooklyn, wherever, they're not cheap. They're not like $20,000, $30,000. They are expensive. They're like house prices, and house prices in New York are, it could be like $700,000, $800,000, wherever you're looking, but it's expensive, okay? And it's not entirely realistic for someone like me with the background that I come from, especially at this age, to just buy a place just like that. It's not realistic for a lot of New Yorkers or Americans in general right now. It's like obviously the price that I'm paying right now for renting is very expensive and it's gotten very high over the past few years, right? But at the end of the day, it's still lower than what I would be paying to buy a home or an apartment right now, you know, because it's not as accessible for just like everyday people. Do what you will with that information. Okay, so now let's move on to the 5 apartment tours that I did. All of them were in Queens, New York City. If you guys want me to make another video on just like Brooklyn or Bronx apartments or whatever area you want, let me know in the comments down below. But these are just like my personal experiences just because I was mainly looking in just Queens to actually personally live in. Okay, so the first apartment was in Astoria, Queens. It was about 20 minutes away from Manhattan. This was a 1 bedroom and it was priced at $28.50 a month. So right when you walk in, you can see this long hallway with the bathroom on the right, and there's also this island kitchen that has really beautiful like granite on it, and I just liked all the wood finishes around the place. But ultimately I didn't choose it just because the elevator was broken when I walked in, so we had to do like a 6th floor, 5th floor walk up, which is fine, but also with things like that just makes it feel like with other issues it wouldn't be as reliable. So make sure to like look at things like that. And since the elevator was broken, we weren't able to see the laundry in the bottom floor because you can't access the laundry, I guess, with just stairs, which that doesn't make sense to me. This next apartment that I saw was also in Astoria, and unfortunately this was a catfish of an apartment, okay? The unit was very beautiful. It was also a 1 bedroom and it was $2,950 a month, but the picture on the listing on Street Easy made it seem like it was more of like a top floor or at least the 2nd floor. But once we got there, this was actually the basement level and it was just a view of the parking lot, which I didn't personally enjoy just because I like seeing some sort of greenery and that wouldn't work work for me when I'm filming YouTube videos like this because there isn't any light. Regardless though, I really love the kitchen of it, and I love the layout of the apartment and the closet space. And it also had a gym in the building, a laundry in the building, and it was in a very good area as well. This next apartment wasn't actually a residential home that was made into kind of like an apartment, and this was a 2-bedroom and it was $2,800. I love that there was like extra space in this apartment. It just personally did not like call to me. I feel like when you walk into apartments, you can kind of tell if you see yourself living there from like the feeling in your heart. And right when I walked into that, I just had like a sinking feeling because it just felt too gray to me. It didn't feel like everything went together. The brown wood with like the gray kitchen. This next apartment was in Sunnyside, Queens. I really liked this because it was a luxury building and it was in kind of like a developing area, so the rent was a little bit cheaper. It was $2,900, which obviously is not cheap, but like for a luxury building with all the things that they included, it was a little bit cheaper. So it had a parking garage for, you know, cars or bikes if you had any of that. It also had a laundry room, and it had a gym in the building with a rooftop, package room, and things like that. So there was a lot of security within the building and extra amenities on top of that you didn't have to pay for. So this was also a 1-bedroom. It was a new building. It also had a balcony in it, and I was trying really hard to like this apartment, and I honestly was about to apply for it. But what I didn't like was that it was so close to the train where you can literally see it from the apartment balcony, and it just felt too gray to me. I feel like when the flooring and appliances are very like modern and gray, it's hard to make the space feel warm because of the lack of color, I guess. And I also didn't like that the area was still developing and not as full as the other areas that I looked at. Like it didn't really have the restaurants and like the culture and nightlife and things like that that I wanted. So that's ultimately what made me not apply. This next apartment was in Dutch Kills, Queens. It's very close to Long Island City, if you guys know that area. This was a luxury apartment. It had a gym, a rooftop, laundry within the building. This was $3,100 a month. This apartment was also 1-bedroom and everything was modern. This building operated in a more eco-conscious way, which was really great. What I really liked about this was like the open space of the kitchen, where you can also put like a kitchen island there to just add more counter space. And there was like a pretty good amount of living room space as well. There was also like really good bathroom space and closet space in the bedroom, which I loved. It was like custom made, it seemed like. But ultimately why I didn't apply for it was because it was a little bit more expensive than I wanted. Again, I didn't like the area too much because it was still kind of developing. It didn't have the things around me that I wanted. But anyway, that is mostly all of the apartments that I toured, and I hope that gave you a better idea on what it's like living in different areas of Queens and things like that. If you do live deeper in Queens or deeper in Manhattan or deeper in Brooklyn, whatever borough. I love how I just never talk about Staten Island. I just personally don't have too much experience on that borough, but that is still an option if you guys want to think about that. But sometimes if you don't drive, you got to take the ferry across, you know, the water to come to Manhattan or wherever else. So that's why some people don't even add Staten Island in the narrative, but that's an option too. So obviously the deeper you go into any borough, it's going to be a lot less expensive because you're further away from Manhattan. But if you don't work in Manhattan, you don't go there as often, if you work from home, those might be options for you where you can live further away from there and have more for your money. But yeah, anyway, that is the end to this video. Please let me know in the comments below, as always, if you guys have any questions about anything, and I will try my best to answer it. But also on top of that, the community on my YouTube channel is incredible. Like, they will answer any question that you guys have if they do know the answer. So just comment any concerns or questions down below and I'll try my best to get to you. Let me know if this video was helpful. I try my best to make a guide every single year to show you what an affordable life is like in New York City. So I'm happy to make more as time goes on, or even just like any other topics that you want to hear about. This was the first year where I actually made a part 2 to the previous video, so I made 2 this year. If you guys came this far, please make sure to actually like and subscribe, because again, I'm gonna be posting so much more things like this. I'm still moving in, so I have a lot more moving in vlogs and just like New York City life in my mid-20s, just navigating here. And it also just really helps with the algorithm, and it pushes this video out to people who actually really need it to, you know, find like a more fruitful, affordable life when moving here. You can also follow me on my Instagram and TikTok. It's @muhuakan. Again, I post every single day. You'll find more like digestible short form content on that. And also check out our podcast called Difficult Dish, where we post every single week. You can now listen to it on all streaming platforms, wherever you listen to podcasts, but also watch videos on YouTube. And I also have a small business. You can see some clothing over here actually, labyrinthapp.com, where I sell a lot of my art and apparel. The fact that you guys buy from me is, I can't even put that into words. Like, I'm so honored. But I love you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!